Unlike prior entries in the Souls series, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is a game that is actually set within a real-world historical period, the Sengoku period of medieval Japan. Of course, other Souls games have been influenced by real-world culture and history, most obvious being Bloodborne, being inspired by Victorian England. We can expect that Sekiro will have a different experience from a lore and setting perspective, and I for one am very interested in what we can expect from the game experienced. Whilst it will have its own identity and story, separate from reality, the inspiration for the setting has been drawn from this real period. In an interview with Game Informer, which I'll link below, Tetsu Takahashi, lead concept designer for the game, said that they wanted to create something exciting in an authentic Japanese setting, and it was something that was really refreshing for the team. For me, this means that we can expect we will have the same From Software creativity when it comes to enemies, stories and creatures, but it will be imposed upon a real period of history. This history will help set the scene for a mythical story that From Software wants to tell. Miyazaki talks about the reasons behind choosing this period over the Edo period in an interview with Famitsu. He says, "With regards to conceit, Warring States is closer to the Middle Ages, which has more of a mythological feel, and Edo is closer to the modern age, with more of a living, breathing feel. Then we chose the end of the period in order to incorporate the idea of decay. My conception of Japanese beauty requires it." We can see there are a number of reasons that Miyazaki chose this period, but he wanted to choose a period that was not only chaotic and full of war, but one that had a mythological feel to it, so that history and myth could be blended into the fictional story that he wants to tell. They couldn't have chosen a much more exciting period of history for the backdrop. The Sengoku period, also referred to as the Age of Warring States, which is generally agreed to have run from 1467 to 1600 in Japan's history. I've given a link below for a very good series on this history period. According to the Sekiro website, this game will be set within the closing days of the 1500s, meaning the latter part of this historical period. This period is one that is typified by upheaval and consistent warfare throughout the country. Regional lords known as daimyos began to vie for great power and control. I see this historical fact regarding the warring clans reflected in the lore that we've already seen. First of all, in the prince, who is the only survivor of a clan who had been wiped out a generation before, and B, the antagonist is the leader of another clan, the Ashina clan. In fact, at the moment, it seems as though the motivation of the Ashina clan is to possess the important blood of the prince's clan. The Japanese Sekiro site gives more of an insight into this backstory of the Ashina clan. Translated by Suzaku, the story segment of the Japanese website tells us that the Ashina clan, under the grandfather of the antagonist, conquered the northern provinces, but now the clan is in peril. It relays a quote from the current commander to his troops, which states, "There are no longer any natural means through which we can protect Ashina from its invaders." This fits perfectly into the backdrop of the Sengoku period. A regional lord, whose family gained power not long before, in this period of upheaval, has now grown desperate from the pressure of other potential invaders, as the powers of local lords wane and grow. The new story trailer emphasises this historical background. It tells us that it is the closing days of the Sengoku Period, and it emphasises constant warfare and various factions being the focus of this period. What then can we expect from this backdrop? Well, I believe it has given From Software a very chaotic backdrop to work with, and that it allows them to fit in all these inter-clan stories whilst keeping to the themes of the period. I'd expect a couple more clans to appear in the game aside from the Ashina clan, given that this is a period of local wards vying for power. The clan appears very desperate, the Ashina clan, and that it is under pressure, which is why they have kidnapped the prince. It is therefore very possible that part of the reason they are under pressure is because of other local lords and other clans. The backdrop of this period will also allow From Software sufficient scope to fit in larger-than-life conflict stories without detracting too much from the setting. Bearing in mind, of course, that there will all be mythical and fictional characters that will of course take the game beyond the realms of actual reality, but it will still fit within the confines of the feel of this period. In the story trailer, they are very much trying to convey the fact that there's a lot of chaos and bloodshed in this period, and we can expect this in the game. We can also expect that the architecture and the backdrop of the game will be very authentic, whilst of course being of FromSoft's own design. It will have an authentic medieval Japanese feel to it. In the interview with Game Informer, Tetsu Takahashi tells us that they wanted to make a real authentic feel to this game. He states, "We had to research a lot of Japanese architecture from the time. I was blown away by how amazing this architecture was, and the integrity of these structures. We actually had these real blueprints that were used at the time. We researched these, and when you look at them, I was staggered and moved by just how intricate they were and how brilliant they were." So we can therefore see that the design team at From Software really are intent on making sure there is a good level of authenticity to the setting and flavour of the game, even going so far as to study blueprints to make sure that the buildings and backdrop are authentic of this era. We can get a flavour of how this real world will actually mesh with the other aspects of the world, as Tetsu elaborates further on this point. He states, "So of course, as with previous titles, we have design orders or concepts and themes from Miyazaki that we use to develop our ideas. It was the same with this game, but we had to fit those ideas within the existing framework in some way, so how they might fit into that medieval blueprint of Japan." So we can see again this idea of blending myth and history of the period. From the trailers and clips that we've seen so far, we are still seeing fantastical creatures and larger-than-life enemies, such as the giant snake and the corrupted monk. These are of course fictional characters, and other fictional characters include Sekiro, the owl, and Lady Butterfly. It is a fictional story, but instead of being a straight-up fantasy, we could describe it as a mythical fantastical fiction with a historical backdrop. In the same interview, graphics engineer Takasuki Ando comments on the fact that there is real Japanese vegetation from the period, Japanese bamboo, that we can even interact with and cut down. It is clear that they are focusing on making the experience, while mythical, very authentic to the period. Even as we dodge the ire of a giant snake, we will be able to appreciate the authenticity of the backdrop. So with all that said, what can we expect from this game from a lore perspective? I think that choosing this period for the game has given From Software a very rich backdrop on which to build their story, with a lot of scope for conflict, as well as for new characters that are larger than life, because this period is characterised by minor lords all vying for power. I think that the attention for detail will not be lacking, and it will be exquisite. From the footage that we have seen, It looks like From Software has really focused on getting the backdrop, architecture, and feel of this game just right, that it fits within the period they have chosen. The interview with Game Informer really emphasises how much work they have done in this respect. From the interview, I believe that Sekiro will still be a no-holds-bar FromSoft fantasy delight, but they have used the period as a base and dialed it up to 11. The game will feature those larger-than-life characters we've all grown to love throughout their games, but they will have a nice medieval Japanese flavour to it, as emphasised in the story trailer. And that, guys, is my thoughts on what we can expect from the blending of myth and history for this game. This is of course based on knowledge that we have before the game launches, and we will get a better idea of course when we all get our hands on. So I hope you enjoyed my take on this, guys. Please drop me a like and a subscription if you'd like to see more Sekiro content coming out when the game releases. Thanks, guys.